It's 6:01 p.m. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. It's October 4th, 2022. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Jim Sayers.
Luann Hook.
Grant Murray.
Ann Lepinen.
Erin Nelson serving as town manager.
So the first item is approval of the Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes of September 20th, 2022. Has everybody read them? Are there any points of discussion, changes, modifications?
Motion to accept.
Second.
If there's no discussion, then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. The second is the approval of the Bluff Town Council special meeting minutes of September 22nd, 2022. The same question, has everybody received them? Are there any changes or corrections? Any points of discussion?
Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve as presented, Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
If there's no discussion, then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone?
I abstain. I was not there.
Mayor, if you guys look at the bottom, there's a little raise your hand icon that popped up this meeting. Like, I'm going to put mine on, and it shows kind of someone that wants to speak. We discovered it earlier today. I just wanted to point that out to you guys.
Okay. When you say if someone wanted to speak, are you talking about one of the five of us, or who are you talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I didn't finish the vote. Anyone opposed? All right. It's unanimous with the exception of Jim, who abstained. Okay. Next would be the public comment. There will be a 3-minute time limit for each person wishing to comment. If you exceed the 3-minute time limit without permission, the meeting controller will mute you. And so if someone has public comment, please let us know now. Wait a minute before I close off public comment. All right, if there's no public comment, at 6:04, then we'll go on to the business. The first item is the discussion of amendments to the town's outdoor lighting ordinance as recommended by Dr. John Barentine. You should all have a copy of the third version that he did following a phone conference with Sarah Barak and myself. He'd had a number of questions that he wasn't clear on what we were asking when we sent it over on the second revisions. So I finally was able to set up a meeting with him. The delay was on my end and not on his, but then he met with Sarah and myself, and most of the questions were just wording questions. That the questions were taken from the minutes of the meeting, the joint meeting, and people made comments that were framed like a question, but they were really just comments. And so then when we went through them, we could see that, like say for instance, Erin, she had made a comment about something that ended up being framed as kind of a question, but it didn't affect the content of the revised ordinance. So now that everyone has it, the reason I put this on the agenda is I want to draw your attention to two issues that we'll have to resolve and that I'd like to have about a half hour to a 45-minute work session on. And that is on the whether we should put the curfew back in or leave it out. And that curfew is for shutting off all your lights if you're not complying at a certain point. And then the second is whether or not we are comfortable with the lumen cap that we have. And for dark sky, international dark sky designation, if I recall correctly, there is no recommended lumen cap. And so what I'd like to do is make sure we've all looked at it and then do a work session for, I don't think it'll take more than half an hour, 45 minutes to go through it so we can vote on it. And what I'd like to suggest is maybe do that work session Monday or Tuesday morning, and then we could vote on the changes on Tuesday night.
That sounds good to me. Take a time and we'll make it happen.
And I have one other caveat, which is Chris is still not weighed in whether or not we have to hold a public hearing. So I figured it's worth doing the work session so that we can make sure we're all on the same page and making the recommended changes. But if we have to hold a public hearing, then we'll do that.
Yep.
So would Monday or Tuesday work for everybody?
Tuesday would work better.
Linda, Lou, Brant,
Tuesday's fine.
that's the 11th. What time would
Tuesday at
There's a
Tuesday at 10 is that. Tuesday at 10 is that trust training.
So you want to do it at 9?
That's all it takes is an hour. That'd be fine.
I don't see it even taking that long, Lou. I think it's, if people have read it and gone through it and looked at the changes, a lot of them are the language changes that we all had agreed to a couple months back. Aaron,
Okay.
does it work for you?
Yeah, 9 would be great.
Is that a county commission day?
No.
Nope, that was today.
Okay, if everybody makes sure that they've got that third version, it's V3, it's in a third color with the changes, go through it, and then we can kick through this pretty quickly, I think.
And just to make sure we all have the right version, is it on Google Docs or was it sent out as a whole new document?
It was sent out as a whole new document.
Okay, I will search some more, but I'm not sure that I have received it. It'd be
Everybody,
nice if we had-
everybody
okay.
did, everybody did receive it.
Okay, I will. Do you know what it was titled?
Well, it would have been a forward from Dr. Barentine. I know
Yeah.
at least three of us have had it and opened it. So let me know if you don't have it, but I don't know how to save anything in Google Doc.
Okay, and that's just like if there was just a little hyperlink on the agenda, then we'd all know we all had the same one. But I will look some more and make sure that I'm looking at the same one that you're looking at.
Yep, there should be three different color changes. And just let me know if you don't have it. When I get back from Salt Lake, I'll get a hard copy to you. Okay, number 2, update and vote on process for request to vacate an alley or road. This is going to be on for next week. I talked with Chris at length last week at the end of the week, and he thought he would be able to get to it, but a couple of things I gave him took greater priority. So he will have it for next week and we'll be able to take a look at that. So that would be the 11th. Any questions about that? I think he's been really kind of backed up and wasn't quite clear what, I probably was not quite clear the priority that we needed. So going to number 3, the update on pathways contract. It's been signed. I signed it Thursday or Friday. They sent the contract on, I think, Wednesday, but I don't know where they sent it, but it didn't come to me. It didn't go into my spam. It didn't come into the office. And so they resent it. So I went ahead and signed that. And Jim and I emailed, we're going to try to figure out with them when the next meeting is, what the next step is. But I didn't have time yesterday or today to follow up with them. So is that, Jim, what you're thinking our path should be, is to follow up with Pathways and see what the next step is?
Yeah, I think they sent me that contract, actually. I thought they sent it to you too.
No, and it didn't show up anywhere. So
And we don't have a date yet to meet with them. Is that correct?
that's correct. That's what I want to follow up on.
I don't have their days that are best in front of me. Recall that one of them was a Friday, I think.
Why don't I send Julie and Judith an email after the meeting tonight and ask them to resend the dates?
That they can meet. Yeah, okay. Sounds fair.
Any questions on that? All right then, update and recommendation on net forest versus the state of Utah for our all of our equipment. So Aaron, I'll just turn this over to you and I'll mute myself so that we don't get a lot of feedback here. Linda and I are in the same space.
Yeah, so as presented in August, we kind of have two ways to move forward with our IT services providers, or IT service provider. The main thing that I do want to ask the council is, just the use of these assets. Or, if we're not using them, they don't necessarily need to be protected. But, the bigger question is, essentially, are you using your town laptop for town purposes? Are you downloading documents? Are you looking at documents on them? Clearly, we need to at least get the assets that we're using our Polaris system secured. That's just kind of a given. But do you foresee needing this big, robust program to protect the assets if they're not being used to their full capacity? And so I don't know if this is enough time to discuss tonight, but we're talking $700 to $800. Now that does include $100 for internet, and that's a base. That's that quote that I provided for you all. If you haven't seen the email, please let me know. But I do have the breakdown between DTS, which is the Department of Technological Services, and NetForce, who we have been using. Please note that NetForce is currently charging us almost $500 a month for pretty basic, not super great support. So, if we're going to move forward, this is a bigger conversation as to, are you using the assets? They do need to be secured if they're being used, but my recommendation to you is to really think, are we using all 6 of them in a way that they need the full governmental security?
You don't for Brant's computer. I use my little phone. I don't use that laptop, so you scratch me off.
Then that goes directly to, if we receive a grammar request, which they will pull documents, are you willing to give over your personal assets to be viewed?
I'll cross that bridge when I get there. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing here currently. Okay.
Is there training that can be provided to make everyone feel more comfortable on the town assets?
We could have had training for 2 years, but we haven't had training for 2 years. And, every time I tried to turn mine on, I got a fail. So I left it in the dust in the office.
I'd like to hear from other folks.
I use mine extensively only for town business, and I think that the security alone would suggest that we would be wise to switch our provider. And the problem that Brant had is not unusual. All the equipment that we've gotten from NetForce has been quite difficult in getting squared away. It took us a long time, and we never really did get it. I mean, without Craig, we'd still be floundering around. So, but I use mine a lot, and I know what that security is all about. And I think we ought to go forward with the state group. I think they're run by the state, right? State of Utah.
Yeah, that's correct. So they provide services kind of at all levels, so
Yeah.
local, county, and it depends on if the local entities use them, but they do provide services throughout the state. The quote is all inclusive. There should not be any additional charges to get things changed over. But they would come in. So the services that you had NetFirst install, a lot of those were for streaming. So all of the wiring is already done, which is great.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
are talking just, for public understanding, we're talking about purely the maintenance and security of the assets moving forward. But there are things here at the office that need to be changed over. And clearly when the CCC becomes the town offices, there would be another large install, which that's not even part of this discussion. We're purely just talking about the maintenance and security right now. So I have had DTS reach out to me multiple times, just kind of wanting to know, if we've heard anything, but they've been very engaged and have provided very, very good communication throughout this process. So that does seem promising to me as well. Other thoughts and comments?
My concern is that, if I recall the conversation correctly, Aaron, is that they would not be as readily accessible as NetForce. And I've had really good luck with NetForce when I've had a problem, including having to make 2 trips here, one on a Sunday. So my concern is, if all things are fairly equal in terms of what they provide, if all things are fairly equal, I would definitely want to stay with NetForce because I like having them closer and available. We're not going to have the state down here like we do with NetForce.
Sure, and that was something that was addressed, and they did recognize that DTS did recognize that they don't have providers directly in the area. For the quote that you received from NetForce, what's laid out, it does not currently include any services outside of a 9 to 5. There are no emergency services. Those would be at an additional rate and or at a different tier of service. And it does not, the standard rate does not include walk-in services either. So what we're looking at, what they have quoted out, is just their bare bones basic. If we still wanted that support, it would be an additional fee and or an additional tier level, which I could get information on if you all wanted to see that breakout.
I would like to see what the breakout would be so we can compare the 2 services. If it's, like I said, if all things are equal, but if there's going to be a huge differential in money, that would certainly affect how I think.
No, that's completely fair. I can definitely get that additional service level quote from them. As things stand right now, in terms of like the security and the firewalls and the trainings and everything, and just their ability to manage our workstations, those are equal. But yeah, that in-person cost is different. And as I had mentioned previously, NetForce, the plan that we had been on, is not even offered by them anymore. Right. And so that's why we're having to look at this anyway. But yes, I can get, if they do it like a la carte, essentially, just like if we had an issue, or just look at that higher tiered plan, because Chris was willing to work on that with us.
Brant, did you have a question or a comment? You unmute yourself. You're muted.
I don't have a bias against NetForce. If everybody likes the service, I just like to be able to turn a computer on and sign on, and I'm sure we can do that, if we sign up, but I'm, either way, you guys decide. I'm good with it.
Well, and both quotes currently include adding the Microsoft suite, which really is what you need. So I'm able to use mine, but it's connected. It's like interconnected to my Microsoft subscription. And so that's the big thing that you all need, is like access to Word, access to Excel, PowerPoint, and then you can read documents more easily. So both of them include that.
That's what I want. Luann has her hand up, I think, electronically or whatever you call it.
Okay, so
yes. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Lou, and then I'll make my comment.
Okay, I just want to say back to Aaron's question about our use of them and whatnot. I do use mine, but not a lot. I tend to use my phone. I'm on the go a lot, so I do a lot of reading emails and looking at Google Docs and stuff remotely from my phone. That's all I do. I don't download any of the documents. The only thing I put a document on is Google Docs. That was one of the questions I had with a tech guy from NetForce, was when I had to get some help with my password. We walked through all that, but then I said, hey, so what about these other services? Are we risking our computers? Are we risking any town thing by opening them from another unit? And he said, no, that when we go on to Google Docs and all that, that's a separate firewall to all of that. That's a whole separate server, regardless of where you go. But if you're downloading stuff or using critical things that would be something to get passwords off of, or bank account information, that kind of thing, then that you would want to have secured. But like in my case, I don't do any of that. But the reason I like the computers and voted for it was because when we do these hybrid meetings, or like where you have to travel and be out of town and can log on remotely, if you don't have a laptop, then you are just on your phone, which is pretty tough to run a meeting from your phone. So that's what I use them for. One thing that I've gotten techie help, usually from the kids, is we'll FaceTime, and I'll turn my FaceTime computer to my computer, and they'll walk me through it. They'll say, okay, click on that, click on this, click on that. Try opening it, show me what you're doing, whatever it is. And so there's a lot of that service available. If we do switch it up to this state service, there's a lot of that online personal one-on-one, call you up and they can be right here. They're as good as being in person if you can show them your computer and whatnot. So and with Craig here on our staff, and with Aaron, I know Amanda and Sarah are great at all of these sorts of things. So anyway, that doesn't worry me as much as it did before, of having somebody close. So I think that was all I'd say. I do like the idea of having a .gov address rather than a .org. I think that's more indicative of what we are as a .gov. That was one of the perks of changing. But otherwise, like I say, it doesn't all for saving money if that's a difference. But otherwise, I've been happy with what we've had, and I'm also happy to switch.
And thanks, Lou. Linda, did you have something? I'm going to mute myself.
Okay.
And if you turn your volume down,
So can
turn your volume down or your microphone off.
Okay, I have been using the HP or Lenovo. So when I use it for business, for town business. I also use my Mac. A couple things. I was looking on the Lenovo, and it's got Office. It's already got kind of a. I haven't had time to really look at it closely.
It's online. It's the
Yeah,
online.
it's
Yeah,
on-
you're on the cloud. You're in the cloud. When
So
you're,
it also, the other thing is the thing with Emory. I don't think we should add it into the equation, because if we went with the other IT, we would still need Emory, because when we rent the community center, people need to have internet access. And I don't think
So I'll address that when you're done, Linda.
so. But 2 weeks ago, I went to NetForce because my Mac was having a problem, and I just the in-person thing for me just really works. And I know that a lot of this stuff is over my head, and being able to talk to someone in person. And Erin is not always here. I mean, sometimes she's on vacation, or I mean, not a lot, that's for sure. But I really appreciate them being close and in person. So
the reason that the quote for for Emory was included in both is because if we were to move to DTS, they have a contract with Emory, and so it would file through. So we would, it's kind of a convoluted thing, but it would essentially be a pass through because DTS has to install a firewall on that physical line. So there would still be internet and everything, but in order to make it apples to apples, that's why I compared it. There's a extra $10 charge for DTS to do that, essentially, because of how it runs through the physical line. But that's why it's included. But it is essentially the same minus a $10 upcharge for DTS. But yes, there no significant change there.
Aaron, would that interfere with the public using that line if we had a firewall on it? It just protects everybody else, all the other computers.
Yeah,
Is that right?
It's these computers that link into it, and it would be, no matter what, you need your desktops that are here to be secured.
Right.
My understanding,
Right,
yeah.
they would, but they realize that we still would have public use.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. All right. Just checking.
So Erin, if you could just maybe clear up a few of those points, and then I think Erin's told us all this, that she's willing to sit down with us individually to look at our computers and help when she's here. So I definitely will be taking advantage of the fact that Erin is here for better than a week. And so when I get back, I definitely will sit down with her, because I'd like to use mine more frequently.
I'll try again, but I got to have somebody I can contact. I'm just not going to sit around every time I try to sign on. I can't get on. So if we can get mine going, I'll use it. Other than that, I'm going to stay where I am.
Okay. So any other questions or thoughts before we move to the next item? Hold on, Linda.
So here's one more question. Would we be able to use Google Suites? Google Suites costs us $51 a month, and it includes, though, planning and zoning. So
Yeah, so Google would kind of be your primary system with NetForce. And so, as you know, right now, all of our town email addresses are kind of like through Gmail, through Google Suites. You would have the option, like if you were to switch over to that like .gov domain, that would probably migrate. You could use that on the Microsoft suite, which is a little bit more intuitive. But no, that wouldn't necessarily go away unless you wanted it to go away. But there are certainly benefits. And then, in Jim's comment about using Microsoft in the cloud, a lot of organizations do that, but there is a little bit of loss of functionality. I don't know, like the comparison for you Mac users of like if it's easier to do the cloud interface, if it's more aligned with like a Mac look. But I know traditionally speaking, the apps are a little bit better to use. There's additional functionality for those. So, but no, Google wouldn't necessarily go away unless you wanted it to.
Okay, if there's nothing more, then we can move to number 5, sorry. The report on the meeting and safety inspection on September 27th, 2022 by Mike Stagg of Utah Local Governments Trust, who's our insurer. And Mike came down, Jim and I met with him, and we went through kind of the Bluff Community Center and looked at the signage and the incident reports. We did have 2 out of compliance things that I was totally unaware of. I was misreading or misunderstanding the tags on our fire extinguisher. So I thought we were compliant and they'd been, we were doing everything we were supposed to. Well, I was wrong. And so they have to be inspected every year. So I took them in on Friday, had the inspections done, had them retagged, and now we know that every year we need to do that. Then Dawn DeLego told me later that the fire station, the volunteer fire department has a provider that comes in physically once a year and does theirs right at the fire station, and other entities could bring them in at the same time. So we might be able to tag team with them for the next one rather than hauling them up to Cortez and back. I did, however, forget to take the one out of the kitchen. And so if anybody goes to Cortez, would you grab the kitchen one or have me unlock the kitchen if you don't have a key and take that? Then the second thing was the AED. The pads in the AED, I did not know this, need to be changed every year, replaced, whether you use the AED or you don't. And so we need to get a new AED pad. Now, Linda raised a really good point. We both think that our contract provided for an option to pay a little bit more and get the update every year, the service piece of it. And so she's checking with our contract to see if we should have received that, probably that AED for about 15 months, maybe longer, maybe 18. So she'll take a look. We also need to get a pediatric AED. So I'm not sure why we're getting feedback.
It seems like I remember us subscribing to the automatic update. So yeah, check on that.
Then we went over to the CCC. We went over and looked at the Old Bluff Elementary School, did a walkthrough. Jen Davila and Sarah Barak joined us for that because we were going to have them look at the playground. He's also, Mike Stagg is also a licensed playground inspector. And so he'd reviewed the report that was done and he looked at the playground. He looked very thoroughly at the playground. He concurred with the inspection that was done by Tom Correo. He concurred with the conclusions. He said and then I'll let Jim say more here, but he looked at it, said it had good bones, that it could be rehabbed, but that I took away from it that he did not feel it should be opened up until it was fully mitigated, meaning we do everything that needs to be done. And so, Jim, do you want to add to that? I'm going to mute myself so you can.
Yeah, you're entirely correct. That's exactly what he said. The more recent playground equipment that if you go look over there, there's some stuff that looks like it was rigged up by some welders, and those older, really old ones that are really decrepit need to be removed. Just the old steel pipe ones. But the real playground equipment dedicated is still functional, but it does have some issues, and it really comes down to cost. If we can get a cost breakdown of what the repairs are going to be and how much it's going to cost to haul out a couple of those pieces versus say cost of a new one, I think we be better able to make that decision. He did say that the whole place would benefit, of course, by a new surface. The surface is really not good at all, but there's some alternatives that aren't too expensive. So some kind of mulch, plastic mulch, I think, but I don't know what it was. But anyway, we'll keep this playground committee at work for a while until we get some numbers that we can look at. But I'm all in favor of having a good playground at that side of town. The playground, as Jen pointed out, by the community center is mostly for little kids. And if we were to upgrade this one and really upgrade it to the point where we've installed accessible playground equipment, we'd really have a nice thing. And as we know, there are more little kids around all the time.
I wanted to add that following the discussion with Jen and Sarah, and thanks to both of them for coming over and meeting with us, I followed up with the 3 companies that were recommended as possible new equipment companies that Tom Correo had recommended. So I followed up with the 3. 2 of them were kind of over the top. I mean, their equipment was really in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. They do more like the big Salt Lake playground area. The third company is let's see, Big Trek, and the sales rep responded to me and said that he would be in this area in the next few months. He will set up a time, and I copied Jen Davila on it so that someone from the playground committee could be there. But when I was looking at the new equipment, really the least expensive that's even close to being what we have now is going to be $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. But I thought it was worth, if he's going to be in the area, having him look at giving us an idea of what we'd be faced with if we wanted to tear down and redo that playground. And I don't think the question really from anybody that I've heard on the council is that we don't want a playground. We just want a safe playground. And so I'll let people know when he's coming, and the more the merrier on that, I think, to get a sense as to what a new one would look like. And I think that was pretty much everything from Mike. He'll be writing up a report that tells us recommendations. He really liked the incident report that we've had to use. He liked that we have only had 1 claim on our insurance in 4 years. So it was very nice meeting with him. Anything else on that, Jim?
No, he's a really good guy. We're lucky to be working with those people at the trust.
In really fast, in regard to just calendar and upkeep, so those fire extinguishers, what is the frequency? Like when do we need to do it next? What would align with the fire station to make sure that they're being serviced?
So once a year, we would have to do it.
So
And
October, you want it on the calendar for October?
October, and I think then follow up with the volunteer fire department to see when they do it. John thinks that they've already done it for this year, but maybe we could tack onto the next one. We might have to get it done a little earlier. It was surprisingly inexpensive. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was like $36, I think. It was well under 50 to do 4 or 5 of those. But the other suggestion, because when I brought them back, the pickleball people were playing, and Anthony Lott was there, and he helped put them back up. And they're different sizes. And I think, Aaron, what we should do is note the location of each of them and write the number on the canister, so that I had to have them switch it out several times because I didn't remember where I took them down from. Okay, great. Then moving to number 6, the update on the Bears Ears National Monument Resource Management Meeting and the invitation to participate. That invitation was accepted. Britt Hornsby, he went to the first meeting. There'll be another couple of meetings, but I did get verification from the, let's see who's managing it. Michael Lundell did verify that we are on the list as an active participant. I couldn't remember if Britt had signed a document or it was just informal at that meeting, so I just followed up with an email. Then moving to number 7, update on the design review committee's work and the meeting with the United States Department of Agriculture on September 28, 2022. Jim, why don't you take that?
Sure. I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about September 20th as well, because we didn't do a report on our last regular council meeting. It just wasn't on the agenda. But that meeting went, that was a very brief meeting. It went only about a half an hour. No news on any grants. One item that's new, other than the usual suspects, was Heather is installed outside trail cams. She wasn't at the meeting today, so I don't know if they're still up, but she was concerned about intruders because we've had some lock issues over there. And I think she was she had a couple of trail cams she was going to install. These are temporary, usually they're not fixed cameras. They're just connected to something, and they're motion activated, and you can check out what's been around. They're used on game trails, but I don't know if they're still up or if she ever even put them up because she wasn't at the meeting today. But other than that, that meeting went, uneventfully. We had another meeting today that was a little longer, 45 minutes. Dave was there. Again, Heather was not there today, but we had some discussion on the joint bank account. I'm just interested in seeing it set up. We've got a motion that the UDB is supposed to pass, the same motion we passed. And there was a lot of discussion about how the group just didn't seem to think that was all that necessary if there is a record of whatever they passed a few months ago. So I don't know whether whether they're going to pass that resolution, whether it's on the agenda or that Chris gave us. I don't know. We've talked about it enough. Everybody knows what it is. I guess if they can provide us with whatever was passed a few months ago, that might work. What I'm interested in is seeing that joint account set up as soon as possible. So we'll talk about that in a minute if you want to. We met with the USDA, Michelle Weaver and Stephanie Cecil on Thursday over at the Cedar Shack. Was it Thursday? And in the morning, they were on their late morning, they were on their way to Salt Lake City that afternoon. But she is the director of the Utah USDA office, and she was very, very interested in everything that we had to talk about. She's very interested in Bluff. She passed along quite a bit of literature here about how to get these grants. She is really prioritizing southeastern Utah pretty highly. This fits all the criteria for need, met all the different criteria they have for need. This is at the top of the list, this area, and she feels that it's been underserved by the USDA. So it sounded very positive as far as getting a grant for getting a grant for the fire suppression system we're looking for, and probably even beyond that, if we watch out for it. It was really a nice meeting, and we met Stephanie Cecil from the Monticello office too. So I don't know how. It was a lot of fun. I think she's going to move to Bluff, isn't she, Mayor?
Well, I had the feeling she was really impressed with us. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
They also reminded us that USDA funded the community center floor, which says to me, in hindsight, I realized in all that material I need to look. I'm betting they do, because they funded the floor, they do recreational funding, which may be another deep pocket to look at for playgrounds. So there are a couple of ways we can hit it, I think, with the needs for the CCC and then perhaps a playground viewing. Linda, did you want to say something, and then Brant's next?
In terms of the joint signed resolution, I believe we must have that and give a copy to the bank for it to happen. So that could be your next step with them. But banks and auditors like signed copies that lay out policy. And you know?
Yeah, I'm how well I know. I mean, I just didn't bother to mention that today about the policies and the so forth because we've been over it, and
Yeah,
so David knows and everybody knows, and we'll just see if it gets done. I'm not going to harangue them. I don't have really any authority, but I appreciate the patience you've made. By the way, the NDN grant has money that David is maintaining that the NDN grant to UDB has funds in it that would not go into the joint account. But he is saying now that it has $94,495 in capital improvement funds. So, every time we talk, that number changes, but it's got to go somewhere or it's just going to stay. They already have it at UDB, and um, we need the joint account as soon as possible.
Here's kind of what we ended up, I think. Heather's back next week. Linda's back next week. We all said, let's open the account next week. And we asked them to provide us with the prior discussion that they had about the resolution in form of sort of what you're looking for, Linda. Now, Dave and those guys said, the town can't really tell us to make resolutions. And that's what Jim's referring to. So we can ask for the resolution, but it's not going to be our form of resolution. It could be their form of resolution. Aaron, you can, you were there.
Yeah, it was kind of ad nauseum that, we need a copy of this. There needs to be something written. They said, well, maybe Woody could just sign something. And we said, we'd really like to see the resolution that was passed a few months ago. And then just a note on what Jim was saying with the NDN grant, the other thing that they mentioned was that of that 94, a significant portion, I shouldn't say significant, about a third of that would be matching straight from UDB. So I don't know if that will impact how the money would move into an account.
So I think our goal as a council should be to try to get this thing done early next week, Monday and Tuesday. Linda, I'll walk over with Heather and we'll try to grab that resolution and make sure check with the mayor, make sure it fits what we need and go ahead and try to get that account open. I think that's where we are.
Well, I have two concerns, and I've expressed them before, but I'm going to do it again. This does not bode well for future cooperation when they won't agree to sign a simple resolution that follows exactly what the contract says that we have with them. Number two, I have a donation that needs to go somewhere, and I'm not putting it in this account because it confuses the bookkeeping. It needs to go into the joint account. And I'm not happy. And I leaned on Chris yesterday. It does not bode well, in my opinion. I'm not the other four of you, certainly. In my opinion, if an entity cannot follow the agreement, the other piece is it ties into that NDN grant. That NDN grant has some serious language concerns, and we've ignored it, and that's fine. And
I don't think we need to go here for that. Let's talk about what the subject is.
I am going to say what I think. I am concerned, and I have this donation now. We need to get a bank account set up and follow the contract. So,
Well, why don't we try to set next week, the two individuals, principals, sit down and try to set up the account and see what the bank requires. And if we don't have what the bank requires, then that will, I don't have to get into a big beef with UDB. All we have to do is hold up the contract. It is required that we set up a joint account. If the only way the bank will set one up is to have those documents, then that's just not, that's not going to be a fight. It's either in or out. And as you say, I share your concerns, Mayor, 100%. And that'll tell the tale. I mean, either they comply with the contract or they don't. And we've already had non-compliance with that contract to some extent. So, we'll just let the chips fall here. The best way to do it, I think, is to try to set up that account and find out what's preventing it.
Hey, Jim, when you talk to the bank, is it a possibility that you could set the account up as a Bluff school account and then add them as a joint later. And that would be
I'm
able
not,
to,
hi, Luann, excuse me. I am not going to have anything to do with setting up that account. That is going to be the financial officers. And they're going to tell me, and then whatever they tell me, I will then communicate it loud and
okay,
clear.
because I'm thinking that right now, if for the town's purposes, if we had a separate banking account that was for the old school, then we can add them to that account later when they're ready to put
We'll get
money
it set.
in, and then it
We'll
would
get it
become
set up.
a
We don't
joint.
need to worry about all this. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, the details. Okay,
Okay.
no, that's
Let's get
fine.
it going Monday.
Yeah.
Question, move on.
Brant, it's not ridiculous.
Well, and that's fine on my end. I'm just trying to think through if there's a solution to gap the time that you're waiting to put the deposit in and whatnot. So
I think
There
anyway,
probably is, but we're not going to find it tonight.
Right. And
Um,
I think that the issue is that how a municipality has to do banking within the banking system, and having multiple accounts doesn't exactly work without having that structural piece. I mean, that's why Chris set it up the way he did. So
Yeah.
I think we just have to go with what was set up. Then
Are we still on this topic? Can I move on to another topic?
Sure.
Great. Adrian Caesar has contacted Dave Conine and asked if there's any interest in a small structure on the grounds of the CCC. And I don't know whether she's talking about one of those timber frame things or whatever, but we kind of, as a group, we said, yeah, it sounds good, at least for some kind of a utility place or a workshop of some kind. I mean, you can always use stuff, right? But beyond that, I don't know what Adrian is referring to.
I have no idea. Probably follow up and find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
and the thing to caution on that is having a plan for that outside space before something gets plopped somewhere. So
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. Maybe we'll try to get on that. Did you have your hand up, Linda? She's moving. I can
Yeah.
see.
Also, it needs to be a recommendation from you guys to the council.
Right.
So that's just mine.
Advisory. Yes. With that, I think that this report is concluded.
All
Are there
right.
any questions?
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Brant.
Thank you.
So number 8, discussion and vote on the amendment to ordinance 6.01.090, an ordinance adopting the zoning provisions and all. The only change to the zoning provision that we're talking about is, let me just get to it so I state it correctly. When the council approved the changes that were recommended by planning and zoning to the document, or the ones that we did not accept, one of the things we did not do that planning and zoning recommended was to use the phrase residential uses. Let me just get to the exact thing. Residential dwellings. We left it at single family dwellings, and the recommendation was change it to residential dwellings. And we had talked about it. We did not accept that one. And in hindsight, the problems that leaving that in is causing, where there's an interpretation that we've limited dwellings to single families, not duplexes, not side by sides. And so I would like to have the council reconsider that vote and consider changing that phrase from single family dwelling to residential dwelling. We do not have to have a public hearing on it, according to our attorney. Luann.
And it would be changing from what to what?
It would be, we left it as single-family dwelling, and the recommendation had been to change it to residential dwelling. So we voted to leave it at single-family, and there have been several interpretations that say that we cannot, including with planning and zoning, that we can't have duplexes, and I don't believe that was our intention, to rule out duplexes or triplexes. The discussion we had was around not having tall apartments and massive structures. And that's why we had left it in as single family dwelling.
So if we put in residential, would that open the door to the taller structures, the apartment buildings?
No, because they're, when you get to the commercial, to C1, C2, C3, that's limiting. So I went through it with Chris McEnany after I went through it with Marcia Hadenfeld. And this would just be allowing a duplex to be made. It would allow a triplex. The height requirements, would not be changing or anything like that.
Mayor, can we make a motion tonight for that?
So I have another comment
Sure.
first. So I just want to back up a little bit on as to why we have zoning. And we have zoning so that we have commercial together and we have residential together. And we have quite a few residential neighborhoods and we have a little bit of commercial. And I think that if you throw out the zoning for separating commercial and residential, you're going to end up with a hodgepodge. We talked about where you could put these things before. So now you can have a grill, then an auto repair, then a house, then a motel, then an apartment building, then a kennel, then a house, then a gas station, then a restaurant. I don't want to have the town of Bluff say that the place that you can live and be a resident in Bluff is up on the highway. I live there. It's not a place for people to live on purpose. So I think that the reason this came to us is because there's one group at the Friends of Cedar Mesa, and they have a duplex that isn't really habitable the way it is. So they want to scrape it and they want to build another one, which is to me all fine and good. But I don't think you should throw out the rest of the zoning for the whole town. I think this is a perfect example of filling out a variance and coming and get a variance to our zoning.
And I don't know that they would qualify, or that getting a variance is legally so difficult that I don't know that anyone requesting a variance is going to be able to get a variance. It follows the law so strictly. In my way of voting, I did not intend to rule out duplexes or triplexes. And I went back and listened to the comments that we had, and it was really centered around not have, in part Lou's comments, and then the other part were my comments about not wanting to have hotels and big sprawling buildings. Brant, did you have something? You're muted.
No, I was just going to prepare to make a motion. It seems to me that it's not a big change, Lou. I don't think it throws out all our zoning. I just think, and we have enough. If you ride down the highway, I've said this before, there are people living beside the highway and commercial. A lot of places in town. So I don't think that's really. It's I don't think it messes up the integrity of our zoning at all.
Anybody else with a comment? Jim, Linda?
No.
Oh, here.
I agree with Brant.
So, Brant, were you going to make a motion? I guess that's the question.
I'll make a motion to make that change, Mayor, to change that wording at this point.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Linda, second. Any more discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
All right.
4 ayes, 1 opposed. Motion passes. Then number 9 is the active transportation plan update. And Luann, that's yours.
Okay, yeah, so I don't have much of an update other than that we do have the committee formed and we are meeting once a week right now to get things underway. We have, last meeting we discussed Bike Utah has a program through the Utah Governors of the Office of Opportunity, Economic Opportunity. Anyway, they work with them, through them. And so they are willing to work with us and help us make the active transportation plan for the town. And that's what UDOT requires. And so anyway, Bike Utah will be at our next committee meeting. And then the plan is to be at at our town council meeting on the 11th. Should be able to join us virtually and present after the work session, present what is next on our list in order to get this moving through the community.
Linda, did you have something?
Yeah, the way that you worded that was a little confusing to me because I thought Bike Utah was going to do the plan for us in 2023.
So what you're right, they will do it in 2023. You're right.
So they're, okay. So they're starting to work with your committee now though in 2022 to do.
Well, there's some initial, that's what we are working with them is to make sure that we've met all the requirements and whatever they need from us and whatever they need from the council and whatever in order to proceed at the beginning of 2023 so that there's no holdups anywhere along the line. And I don't know what they'll need. That's part of what the work session is for, is to figure out exactly what they need from us. And then they will present those needs to the council after we do the work session. But yeah, the actual town workshops and the plan making and all of that will be in 2023 and in time to be able to apply for construction grant if the plan gets, consensus, whatever, we get a plan in place from the community and from the town council. Then if we have something that we want to do, then that would be done in time to apply for construction grants through this, it's the Biden administration, the infrastructure grants that have been put in that big Biden bill that went through for infrastructure.
Okay, Linda.
Looks like Linda has one more question.
Yeah, I'm requesting that Chris do a presentation. I know I've talked to Brant a lot about this because he's talked to Chris a lot over the last couple of years. And in some ways, I feel like I'm the least informed. And it would be really helpful to have him present like at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think maybe between your technical issues there, that's the plan. On the 11th, which is the next Tuesday meeting, he'll be at our meeting and he will present everything that and be available for questions and whatnot on the 11th. So that way we can move forward on whatever he needs, whatever we need, and there won't be this, questions in between of somebody assuming something on one end or the other.
Mayor, did I see that Chris might be here for an arts festival? Have a table at arts festival? Is that something?
Yeah, that's right.
Great. That's great.
Yep. Yep, he'll be done. And that won't be Chris, that will be Vince Locke. He'll be at the arts festival with the table. And so an email sent out, an email to make sure you stop by there and talk to him about, your bicycle needs or desires or whatever. But yeah, stop by and see him there at the arts festival. He'll be there both days, it sounds like.
Surveys, and so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that, Bran. I didn't have that on my notes.
Well, it sounds like progress is being made. Thanks, Lou.
All right, you're welcome.
Then the next item is the Community Development Block Grant Workshop for 2023. So we received a notice that CDBG mandatory workshop will be held in November, and I'm just looking here at the dates. No, let's see, November 2nd and 3rd will be in this area. So if we want to apply for another community development block grant, one of us would need to go to, one or two of us would need to go to Blanding, I think it's at USU this time, and get the information to be able to get in line for any block grant. Initially, my reaction was, not so early, because we haven't even started on this one. But I do think it's worth somebody going and getting the information so that if something did come up in 2023 and we wanted to apply, we've done the first meeting. If we don't go to the first meeting, we can't even apply. So that being said, I can look at the calendar. I'd be willing to go up and go to it. I'm pretty sure I'm clear that day. But I think we should probably just get in line in the event we need something. Brant?
I think that's a good idea, Mayor, and just kind of stay in the cycle.
Aaron?
Would I also be able to attend that meeting? I'll be in town that week, and I think it would be beneficial since I kind of came in partway through this CBDG cycle.
Oh, no, Aaron, I definitely would not want you there because you would understand what they're talking about. I would prefer to go myself, get the information, and come back and nag you that I don't understand how to do this. So, yes, you would be able to go.
Okay.
We can have, for something like this, we can have whoever wants to go. But I definitely would appreciate it if you would go. You've been a huge help on this CDBG grant, and they tweaked it enough from our first one to this one that some of the portal information was totally new to me. I thought I'd have a heads up on that. And so, yes, and I'll get the card over to you this week so you can get all the information. I think it's the 2nd. Anybody else have a burning desire to go? It is interesting. I shouldn't word it that way. It's really worth going to just to be able to network and to know what other people are doing in the community.
I went to the last one. Thank you.
He said with enthusiasm. Okay, Aaron and I will go.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
All right. The next one is, I'm going to have to figure out where I turn this hotel light on. There's a discussion and vote on the policy for rental of the audiovisual equipment that we use for streaming versus the audiovisual equipment we got from the BSA. And just briefly, without belaboring this, it was clear to me that when Friends of Cedar Mesa rented the community center for Celebrate, we have not distinguished between our audiovisual equipment that we've been using for rentals from our streaming TV station type of equipment. And Friends of Cedar Mesa was of the impression that they were getting the newer, updated screens, everything. And so, as we talked about it, it was a misunderstanding and miscommunication. And as I thought about it, I thought we really need to parcel out in our contract what equipment we're talking about and what the fee then is for the reasonable use of that particular equipment. I don't know how other people feel. To me, the streaming equipment, the really new expensive stuff, is really for our purpose and not for community rental. And certainly people may disagree with me. But the other piece to that discussion is then I ran it by myself several times. Like if I were Craig and I was running this equipment and we rent out that equipment and the renter brings in their own person, then they're using our equipment that Craig has set up and fine tuned. And so just from the ease, I feel strongly, but obviously whatever people want to do is fine. And I'd like to hear what people think, or what are we running? And then how do we do this?
I think that it is no great, I don't think it's really hard to differentiate between what is clearly broadcast equipment and is dedicated computer broadcast equipment and audiovisual equipment. And I think there are a lot of people that know that, and I was really kind of surprised that Friends of Cedar Mesa didn't approach us and ask us about that. But that's under the bridge now. The broadcast equipment we don't rent out. That's all there is to it. Some of that equipment, some of the broadcast equipment is AV equipment, but some of it is not, and we can't afford to rent out our anything having to do with, especially when we've got a dedicated technician, as we have, as you pointed out. If they come in with somebody else, that just isn't that's not practical at all. So make that distinction, and it doesn't get rented out as far as I'm concerned.
Grant?
I agree. There's a separation there. If we need to buy some PA equipment for the thing, we can pay for it in rentals. But let's just separate our broadcast from the use of that facility.
Lou, Linda, either of you having a thought on this?
I would also like to suggest that we check the equipment that we do use. Maybe we update. We definitely probably need more cords, and I think that would be really helpful.
We could have a fee for rental back for the new PA. Kind of think about something that goes along with the facility that's not part of our operation.
Luann?
Yeah, so my question is, were they streaming something live out to an audience?
If you're looking at me to answer a question like that, you're looking
I'm curious. I'm curious why they wanted. I could see that they would want to do something like that. I could see that if somebody was doing a political thing and rented the community center, they might want to broadcast out to their group, not on our channel, but on their own channel. I do not think you should let anybody else use it, but I think that there's a possibility that that's kind of why it's set up so nicely. If somebody's doing a play or somebody's doing a program, a fundraiser for the school or whatever, that they could stream it and it could go out live on YouTube. And that's kind of a cool feature that the community center could be rented more often if they knew they had that option. But I think that it would need to be rented out with our techie using it, and then maybe that fee again for per hour that you have him there, you pay for him, plus that much more again for the equipment, could help be a little anyway. Yeah, that's my thought.
So one of the things I tried to think about was exactly that. Like, what if somebody wanted to rent all that equipment, and the condition is that our technician goes with the equipment, we bill him. Well, now we've gone down a murky path. We have to now work with Craig or whoever the technician is to work with that person's schedule to make sure that that person's schedule fits within the schedule of the people who are renting and fits within our community center. Then being able to parcel out the payment for Craig or whomever in the accounting, it just becomes so murky to me that trying to control the technician schedule while other people are setting public events in our building just is going to be potentially a nightmare. And I don't like the idea of somebody else using the equipment. But again.
No, and the more you think about it, the more reason is to have the firewall between our equipment and that, our personnel and that. So let's if somebody needs to stream, then they need to bring what they need to stream. And, you know, it may be just a computer and,
Yeah, I agree. You can rent that stuff. If somebody tore this up, it's cost us $10,000 in a lot of hours, over 10,000, and a lot of hours to get going. And so what do? Walk away? Can we
No,
just don't rent it?
I think we're all in consensus of not renting it just to somebody who's renting the community center and handing them the cart. I think we're all, and I haven't heard anybody argue that point. I don't think that's the issue. It's just whether or not it's rentable with a techie, if they arrange that, and can they do that? Can they hire our techie to run it, to stream? And if they can do it with a computer, but you know, that's what those big cameras are up in the ceiling and the zooming in and getting different angles, and that's what we bought. So it's a way to use that before it's obsolete.
Aaron?
So I definitely am hearing both sides for sure. The one thing that I would say is that I think organizations still have the opportunity to stream just in a Zoom session. You know, they're not going to have all the angles, but they'll still be able to facilitate a live stream if they wanted to do that or record it. They would just need to bring in their own equipment. I was violently nodding when Linda was talking about inventorying our current equipment. I had a bit of a situation a few weeks ago, and I can wholeheartedly say that I think it would behoove us to look at what we currently have and just start, you know, just see where we need to go, because there are definitely current new laptops that are not connecting to our current rentable equipment. And I don't think that's fair to have the expectation of I'm renting equipment and then not be able to use it.
I agree.
So I'd say just rent it with no equipment. It's the community center and they bring their own, because otherwise you're going to say, this isn't working, that isn't working. Who's going to come fix it? And then you're paying somebody to fix it. Just rent it with no equipment.
Do we need a motion for that, Mayor?
Well, we probably need a motion, but
Want to wait till next meeting and we'll get it together, organize it a little bit?
yeah, why don't we put this on for the next one, and let me work on what the different scenarios would look like. Running without equipment, running with the current equipment, not using the streaming stuff. Let me work on that and bring kind of the alternatives so we're not all on different pages when we vote. Okay. Then number 12, we talked about a work session, so we've nailed that down for Tuesday next week at 9 o'clock. We need to set the public, well, we need to discuss setting the public hearing on Judy Lyman's request to disconnect from the town of Bluff. I would like to propose the date of December 1st, 2022. I've been going back and forth with Bruce Baird, her attorney, for 2 weeks trying to find a date that works in his schedule, which is very busy with things. And I think that's a date that would work. It's not a Tuesday night, deliberately not a Tuesday night, because I think we'll have a fair amount of participation. And I don't want us to try to do our business and do a public hearing on this. There's a lot of work that will need to be done to get ready for this. And I think December 1st would be a good target date. Thoughts?
My question is, what happens after the hearing? Like, how much more pressure are we putting on the attorney and the rest of us to do something? Is it by the end of the year? Do we have 2 weeks after? Do we have months after? Like, what's the deadline so that we can kind of back up to that and work back? Because if it's going to require another 2 or 3 meetings in December, I don't think that's very sustainable.
I will be sending to you all the confidential memo from our attorney, which is protected by attorney-client privilege. It cannot be disseminated. I received it today. It lays out the process. I have not had an opportunity to read the entire memo. It's lengthy, But my recollection from the last go around with Mr. Baird is we hold the public hearing, we take a vote to disconnect or not disconnect, and then the ball is in his corner. So we don't have, the only work we've got is to take a vote at that point, and then we just sit and see what he does. That's my short version. But remember, when we distribute this memo, it's confidential, it's attorney-client privilege. If it, people share it, then it's public information right now. So it's all just between us. Brant.
No, I think that's exactly the way to go. I like December 1st. I may be gone the second and third week in December. So it works well for my schedule, and I think it's time to do this.
Chris is clear on that date. Mr. Baird is clear on that date. I believe his client is clear on that date. I'm hoping that Aaron will be able to join us live. But I would encourage us to now thoroughly read the memo, do some thinking, and then I'll set an executive session, most likely at the conclusion of our meeting next week, so that we can ask questions. I'll see if our attorney can be available for that. Anything else on that? Then update on planning and zoning, Lou.
I can.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Either way, Aaron, if you've got some notes, go ahead. I made some notes. I went on YouTube. I feel like I was there, but anyway, we go ahead if you've got a quick update, and then I'll just add to whatever.
We can tag team it since you watched it. So the Planning and Zoning Commission did approve a land use clearance for Lynn Stevens for a new build for the fort for some housing. So that's on the corner. Their previous land use clearance was denied due to the building not meeting current code. So that this new one was passed as it met all requirements. There were some community questions regarding RVs, which the commission is currently following up on with Chris. And then they did interview Malia Collins for one of the open seats, and that recommendation should be coming to the council. And then Amanda Podmore, so Sarah Burak is taking a maternity leave. And so Amanda Podmore is now the official acting chair for the remainder of this term. And then they revote at the beginning of the year for their chair, vice chair, secretary, and all that good stuff. What did I miss, Luann?
Yeah, I think that was, they talked a little bit about the lighting ordinance, and wanted somebody from planning and zoning to meet with Dr. Barentine, which, happened with this last week. And yeah, that was it. They talked about zoning code changes. The one that they were wondering about was the residential dwellings in the commercial zones. And so that one does not need to go to a public hearing, but there are several others that they think will need to go. So they kind of made a list of those. And anyway, yeah, that was pretty much it. So, and it was great. I mean, YouTube works just real great. If you miss something, you can go back and look at it on there. It's easy to access. But yeah, thanks, Aaron. And thanks for attending in my spot. Appreciate that.
Anything else on planning and zoning? I did not put, I originally had, if you recall, the discussion and vote on the planning and zoning vacancy, but I took it off because I have a little bit of work to do that isn't related to the candidate. The work is just some paperwork that I'd like to have the ducks in a row before we take that vote. So, Aaron?
Yeah, the only question I have for the council, so they did not receive any other applicants, and there is there will be a vacant seat when Eggy's term expires. So my question for the council is, would you like to leave that notice up or repost it in the San Juan Record to try to get that 5th seat filled for this coming term, which starts at the beginning of December?
So that's part of the discussion for next week, because because I'd like to have the paperwork kind of in order. I think what we do practically is we just have to open it back up. We don't even have to rerun it in the record, but let's try to bunch that all up together. But that's a good point.
No, I'm sorry for the thank you for the clarification.
No, that's fine. I just think that we should look at it as a total. And one of the options that I'll be raising is you can run with 4, or do we open it, keep it open and keep trying to encourage someone to apply? How do we do it?
Yeah.
So let's have that full conversation, because Erin's pointed out a couple of things that she'd like to see kind of rewritten. So let's address it next week, which moves us.
Wait, I have one other follow-up on planning and zoning, sorry. One thing, we also are short advisors to planning and zoning. The advisors that we're on are no longer. So if anybody wants to do that, but wants to be a full-on commissioner, maybe those are people that don't live in the area or don't live right in Bluff and don't meet the standard of being a resident. That's a possibility. And then the other thing is that they do meet tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, and Dr. Barentine is going to be at the meeting, is planned to be at the meeting, and we'll be answering questions from planning and zoning on that final red line document that they have questions on. So that's tomorrow at 6.
That's interesting, because I was unaware of that. And our contract, I don't know, extends to that with him.
They discussed it at the meeting, and then it's on the agenda. So as far as I know, he's planning to be there.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing that that's what the plan is. The question that I have is the contract terms. So I'll try to talk to somebody in the morning.
Okay. Yeah, and if that's why I want to make sure everybody can hear. And again, you can go to YouTube and watch it later, but it could be a good discussion for any questions anybody still has on that ordinance.
Well, that ordinance is technically passed off to us. So, I mean, I'm concerned about the procedural piece, and I'm also concerned about the contractual piece. So I need to go back and talk to probably Amanda and find out exactly what the thinking is, and to Dr. Barentine. So anything further on other?
I think that came out of the discussion where you were really emphasizing that their group and our group are all communicating together and getting the same information. And I just listened to it tonight, so it's fresh in my mind. But anyway, I think that's where that must have been generated, and then
the fact that Sarah and I spent an hour with Dr. Barentine was what I thought fulfilled both our obligations to get the information that we had. So again, it's contractual and procedural, so I need to take a closer look at it.
Okay. And so anyway,
thanks,
there you go. Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Anything on other? It is 7:30.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that, Mayor.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, it's unanimous. Thanks a lot. And
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Yeah.